Hi, I'm Debbie Roberts from Property Apprentice, and welcome to today's podcast. The subject for today's session is the number one question I get asked by coaching clients. So, a bit of a shorter snippet for you today, and no PowerPoint presentation. So, if you're listening, you're not missing anything at all. So, there's a lot of questions that we get asked on a regular basis, but one of the most common ones is what sort of property is the best investment and whereabouts is the best place to invest in New Zealand? Yeah, I know it's cheating because it's kind of two questions, but I'm going to roll with it anyway. The answer is that depends. Okay, I know that sounds like I'm dodging the answer, but it really does depend. There is no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to investment property. In order to work out what strategy you need to choose and what types of properties you should be looking for, you first of all need to know the answer to these questions. Now, these questions are in no particular order, but number one, what is your starting financial position? How much available equity do you have? What level of provable income do you have? What's your borrowing capacity based on both equity as well as provable income? And are you limited by either equity or provable income? You'll always be limited by one or the other of those two things. Secondly, what is it that you want to achieve from property investment over the long term or the medium term or the short term? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Number three, what are your short to mid-term life goals? And will any of these goals affect your income in either a positive or a negative way? For example, do you want to start a family? Are you going to be financing children's education in the short to mid-term? Are you wanting to reduce your hours at work? All of those sort of things need to be taken into account. Number four, what time frame are you working towards? For example, if you want to get out of your day job in the next 6 months, your plan or strategy is going to look completely different to someone who's happy to work for the next 40 years. And number five, what level of risk do you feel comfortable with? Different types of property investment strategies incur different levels of risk. For example, a house in the suburbs has a different level of risk associated with it than boarding houses or a commercial property, for example. And likewise, these different strategies have different levels of risk as well. So, for example, buy, renovate, hold has a different level of risk associated with it than a development strategy, especially, development to hold or development to sell. So once you know the answers to those questions, then you can work out the answer to the question of which strategy to choose and what type of property you should be looking for. When you know what sort of equity and yield that you need to get in the deal, then you can work out where in New Zealand you're most likely to find those deals at any given time. So it's important to remember that not everyone can afford to invest in the area that they live in. For example, if you're an Aucklander, you might not be able to afford to buy an investment property in Auckland. There's often better places to invest rather than just close to where you live. As property investment coaches and investors ourselves, we've owned rental properties while we were living in Auckland as far south as Invercargill, so it's not all about buying in the area that you live in. And with today's technology, life is a whole lot easier when it comes to researching areas outside of the place that you live in as well. Now, the next most common question that I get asked would be, is now a good time to buy? And the answer to that question is, the best time to buy a property investment is always going to be 20 years ago. In fact, I'd say the best time to buy property full stop is always going to be 20 years ago, regardless of whether it's a home or an investment. But as long as you know what sort of property deal is right for your financial position and your goals, right now, if you can get lending, is always going to be the next best time to buy for long-term property investments. Okay. And Warren Buffett's got a famous quote that says, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone else planted a tree a long time ago. And I think that's the whole point of property investing. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It is something where if you get the fundamentals right and you hold for the long term, then you will generate wealth over the long term as well. And when you're investing for the long term, getting your timing right in the market is less important. In fact, it becomes almost completely irrelevant, okay? Because trying to time the market is a recipe for disaster. So thanks for listening today. Hopefully you got something out of it. Stay tuned for the next podcast.